I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Little something about terrorism that no one ever tells you. When a bomb goes off, no one knows what to do. I mean, in the movies, everyone screams and scatters, right? When the hero does something heroic, people take action. They either fight or flight. In the real world, people just stand still. They are positively bovine. They just stand there, eyes wide open, mouth agape, looking at each other, not knowing what to do. You just sort of stand there. And I realized this on January 14th, 2016, during that terrorist attack in Jakarta. I didn't see it, but I heard it. And here's the other thing with explosions. You know it's an explosion. It's not a car backfiring. It's not something heavy falling to the floor. This reverberates through your chest. It moves your insides a bit. There's a ringing in your ears. It's a bomb. And nobody knows what to do. And, you know, the commandos were there. I didn't see anyone get killed. I didn't get hurt. I didn't see anyone get hurt. And I didn't know that I was affected until the next day when I was at my apartment, which was nearby, and I looked out the window at the vast expanse, gray expanse of Jakarta, and I thought, I can't go outside. It's right at my door. Terrorism. I feel unsafe. I was rattled for 4 or 5 days. I had a little bit of PTSD. And I can't imagine if I saw someone get hurt or somebody pointed a gun at me. That was my little trauma adjacent taste of terror. So when President Widodo and his cabinet said that the ISIS fighters and their families can't come home from Syria, yeah, I felt some schadenfreude. You deserve it. You deserve to be left there. And then I remember the little kids that are there, the women that went there for various reasons. They didn't know. They got lied to. And it made me wonder, maybe, fuck you isn't a good way to create government policy. So I wanted to get a guy on the phone, Noor Huda Ismail. He's been thinking about this a lot back since 2003. I think he started a cafe in Solo, putting former Islamists and jihadis to work, rehabilitating them, giving them a second chance. I needed to test and challenge the schadenfreude that I felt, the sense of justice that Indonesia seemed to be meting out. Was it just? Is it smart policy? And we're going to find out that Pak Noor says, no, there's nuances involved. And the best way to deal with this is to bring them home. The government has decided to leave former fighters and their families in Syria, in part because they are something like viruses. They have adopted extreme views, and if repatriated, they would pose a danger to society. What's your view?
First of all, you have to understand that particular event when the president announced this as a political communications. As a politician, he has to make the nation feel happy. I mean, the whole Indonesian people feel satisfied because 70% of Indonesians say no for the repatriation of ISIS, and you have to fulfill that. But in reality, I'm sure there are many work has been put, try to deal with this issue in more nuance. Let's say how can we handle with the children below 10, how should we handle the mothers, and even the president says, we need to come up with a strong database. But to me itself, if the government really, really refused to take Indonesian back to Indonesia, I think Indonesian kind of give this problem into the global world, especially to the authorities I'm not so sure either before was ruled by the Kurds, but today I think it's ruled by the Turk. So give that problem to the global community, and I think put this region into more dangerous place. Not only now, but we are seeing already those deportees, not returnees, yeah, those two Indonesian who failed to enter Syria, come back, and then they managed to go to Holo, southern Philippines, then blew themselves up, in a church. So the issue here is when the government say no, the ramification is not only about Indonesia but also in the region.
But so there have been cases where, as you say, deportees, and I suppose that we need to make clear to the listener that deportees, as opposed to those repatriated, the deportees are those that have been stopped at the border of Syria, usually by Turkish forces, and handed back over to Indonesians, versus detainees who actually made it onto the battlefield and have been captured and being held. Returnees. So, they're called returnees. That's right. Well, these deportees, as you say, have come back and then disappeared into other battlegrounds, such as in the Philippines. Does that then indicate that perhaps the government has something of a point, that these are dangerous people that are intent on causing mayhem and spreading extremist views?
Yeah, the argument is correct. The argument is super correct. But also you have to take other argument as well. Because to me now the issue is no longer whether we should take them or not. The issue is whether we want to have detected or undetected Indonesian who join ISIS. Because we have a golden opportunity now that they are locked in one camp, which is either in Arhol and Aroj, and then we can identify, understanding their process of joining, and then their existing status. So if I were the Indonesian government, I might take them and bring back to Indonesia. I will interrogate them and ask them to, to point, to help us to understand the network, because people cannot go by themselves. They are the product of a specific epistemic community, and we need to understand that community.
As you pointed out, the detainees are being held in two camps. So can we go over their names again? Al-Hol and Al-Roj?
Yes, that camp. There are, at least so far what we know of, the Indonesians are detained in Al-Hol and Al-Roj, but there are other two detained in an area near Idlib. Some of them, but they are not ISIS supporter. They are. When they join a group called An-Nusra.
The government says that it's something in the order of 700 or so detainees. Do you agree with that number? And are they all fighters? How do they break down? There must be family members and kids involved in that. What's the breakdown in that number, if it is indeed accurate?
The number itself is dubious. It's hard to verify. No one has that real data. But I think we have to understand that not all those who travel to Syria, they want to fight. Some of them, they just want to live under Islamic Caliphate. Some of them even were born there. Some of the individuals that we have been trying to understand here, they travel there as a family member. And then when they arrive there, they deliver two babies. So here we can see, at least from the data that we managed to gather, 198, and 70% of them were women and children.
198 are detained. We're not 700.
No, that is the data that we managed to gather. When I say we, meaning like two years ago, But I don't know what the number coming from, that 600 something. I think the number will be way lower than that.
Oh, you were doing research 2 years ago, and you came across about 200 detainees then. Chances are it's gone up since then, but doubtful to the extent that the government is saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether the number increased that much. Maybe because after the collapse of ISIS, but because when I was there in August 2017 and early 2018, the number is around that much. But maybe after 2 years after the collapse of ISIS, and then many ISIS and Bahus, and then many of the Indonesian actually flocked into that one camp, in these two camps, and then that number increased. I don't know. beyond my knowledge.
So it sounds to me as if your view is that better for the government to know where they are, bring them home,
Yes,
debrief them,
yes,
reintegrate them, keep track of them, and
yes,
find out and use them as a point of information, if not as a cautionary tale to those who
yes.
might go do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what is the recidivism rate when they come back? How likely is it that they may fall into the same ways again?
I think best. I don't know. For now, only one person from those who travel to Syria and come back, the guy named Sawaluddin Pakpahan, who actually involved in terrorism. But even this guy, he didn't join ISIS, but he joined a group called Free Syrian Army. He was disenchanted and disappointed to see what happened there, the practices of un-Islamic manners of those Free Syrian Army, and then he come back and then he involved in atrocity in the name of ISIS. But it was not ISIS. We haven't really seen the recidivism case of any ISIS returnees. But if the recidivism case in terrorism, at least we see 10% of it. So no, since 2009, after the second Marriott bombing, what we are seeing in Indonesia has to do with prison system, meaning that all the terrorist attack either committed or planned by individuals who are linked to prisons. So I think the fear of the Indonesian government of recidivism, the fear of the Indonesian people and the Indonesian government is very justified to see what we are seeing now. But in reality, what we are seeing, at least for now, those who fight and come back now with the ISIS, they are disenchanted. At least those who come back now in Indonesia.
I understand.
But
And
some of them now who are still in camp, they sold everything. They sold everything. So they don't want to come back because there is no hope to come to Indonesia. And they know that when they come back, they will be prosecuted, they will be sent to jail, and then nothing left. So therefore, they still do hope that ISIS might want to resurrect again. At least this is what happened, what I heard from Indonesian who are now in Al-Hol camp. And Al-Hol camp. They still hope, that, the resurrection of ISIS and then they can have a better life there. They don't want to come back.
in your career as a journalist, as an activist, someone involved in reintegrating erstwhile jihadists, you spend an awful lot of time thinking about what it is that gets people to join extremist movements, and people in particular men and boys, that it appeals to a certain definition of masculinity. And I think in a paper that you published this month in Home Team Journal, you state that joining ISIS appealed to a masculine sense of self-reliance, of inclusion, and quite chillingly, subjugation of women. Can you
And that's scary.
can you paint a picture of the type of man that would get involved in this?
Yeah, my paper based on my deep interview of a guy called Ramdan. Of course, it's not a real name. So I use a life history approach to argue that man's identity is fluid. So I divided into three: before fighting, during fighting, and after fighting, and then to look at also his development of the world, his mental and psyche through different layers. Also micro, which is making man in the family, and then meso, making man in the society, and macro, making man in international relations. So part of the appeal for people like Ramdan to join ISIS, just as a way for him to fulfill his sense of masculinity, because he was, unlike many jihadis who travel, who join ISIS to fight and to kill, for him is, I want to have a better life, because he lost his job. He lost his job. His business went bankrupt, and then he was no money. And then his brother, and through through the propaganda, ISIS said, if you to join group ISIS, we will provide you, economic stability, and importantly also the possibility of choosing a wife, because he was a divorced man. So basically, not only have a good money, but also you will get laid.
Yeah, I suppose this needs to be emphasized that in the propaganda, they were ISIS's big appeal was that there was housing, there was a job, there was services, there was purpose, and there were women.
Yeah, I think this is part of the propaganda that ISIS has been put on their campaign. You know, the possibility for men to get a fixed job, a house, and also a partner. You know, which is wife, and this is something that appeal many men, including Ramadan. So that is the allure. You know, of ISIS back then.
So where does violence fit into it? Because I haven't heard the word war once yet.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, by the time he arrived there, then, gradually ISIS transformed Ramdan's masculinity from normal, from civilian masculinity into militarized masculinity, where ISIS asked him to participate in military training, involved in shooting, and involved in, all the atrocities that asked by ISIS, especially to involve in skirmishes or even confrontation.
Where's Ramadan now?
Yeah, Ramadan now is in West Java, struggling to go back to his own life.
It sounds like another version of the concern that emerging economies might have of not fully engaging or fully employing their young men.
Yep.
Young men with time on their hands are inherently unstable.
Yep.
Is this an example of that?
Yeah, this is partly, I try to advocate this. People always obsessed with the notion of ideology, that the main driver for man to join ISIS. But I argue differently. Yes, ideology play important role, but not the only reasons. And one of the reasons that at least in the case of Ramadan, is the notion of masculinity, material gain. His masculinity was defined by material gain and subordination of woman, because he believed by the time he traveled to Syria, the likelihood for him to get a better job and a wife was a main driver for people like Ramadan.
Well, we've talked about the men. Why do the women go?
I mean, like, that's again, and inside my first, the first interview, I said there are different attractions for men and women to join ISIS. For in the case of Ramadan, he witnessed by his own eyes how woman was being locked in being segregated. You see the clear segregation living in ISIS, and some women were forced to marry other fighters. And this is what happened in my film, Seeking the Imam. One of the main source in the film, Dania, many ISIS fighter approached his father, to ask Dania to get married with a fighter, but Dania always said no. So yeah, Dania among the few lucky women in the ISIS camp. Some of them were forced to do it by their parents.
You're getting ahead of me there, Noor. I haven't had a chance to tell the listener that you've got a new documentary coming out, Seeking the Iman. Why the need for a second documentary? You've already done Jihad Selfie. What's the other part of the story that you wanted to tell?
No, in Jihad Selfie is a story about a young man who wanted to go and he decided not to go because he remember, his mother. So the role of parent is very important. The second film is much more powerful. It's a story about someone who actually been there, lived there for 1 year, 10 months, and she was disappointed to see what happened there and come back. And then hopefully through this film, we got the chance to listen first-hand experience of someone who actually traveled there. But to see the hypocrisy of ISIS. That is the whole point of me making the film, to challenge the ISIS narrative.
Going back to the men that make the journey to become jihadists, they're going there to make something of themselves and to find a wife, start a family, and have a better life. And in the process, they lose everything. It seems to me the very definition of emasculation.
Yes.
What is that process like? How do they rebuild, if at all?
How they rebuild their masculinity?
Yeah, their perception of themselves as men and as members of society. I mean, if anything, they're far, far worse off now
Yeah,
than when they left.
this is the struggle that Ramdan is having at the moment. When he arrived in the country, of course, he has to deal with the issue with his ex-wife, because when he traveled to Syria, he brought with him his son, and the wife was so furious. So up to this moment, the wife said no to Ramdan to see his own son, and now he is also struggling to get a job. So I think Ramdan is among the few lucky person who has a family who is so very supportive family. The family coming from middle class, so they have been very supportive to rebuild Ramdan's masculinity.
Where is the son?
The son now is in Jakarta.
Did he go to Syria?
No, he brought with his son. He lied to his wife, saying that I'm going to take my son to travel to Europe, but end up going to Syria. So the wife was so angry to him.
Sounds like kidnapping to me, mate. I don't know why he's not in jail.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. What are the key characteristics when it comes to reintegrating ex-ISIS fighters? What is the formula for success?
Okay, so I come up with three concepts. The first concept, it is for general public to understand what I call it BE, banality of evil. So everyone who become evil, they are just banal. They're just normal individuals, sadly, like us. They drink coffee, they eat, they even can greet each other. They become evil because of the socialization and the network. So this is the first thing. So none of them suffer from, let's say, psychological issue. They are not, they are not freak. They are normal. And then second thing, to engage them individually, you need to come up with a triple H. The first H will be hard. You need to win their trust. After winning their trust, we go to the second one. We call it hand. We transform their skill. We give them a livelihood, a skill, so that they can start to find their own calling. And last one will be head. We need to challenge their ideology. We need to make them aware that what they did was wrong in any standard of the world, religiously, socially, whatever. We need to challenge that. And then to do that, we need to bring them to society. And so this going back to our third concept, in society, with which I summarize into 4 Bs. The first B will be we need them to band, meaning band. They need to band together in a completely different social setting. After they band, hopefully they can bond. They have a bonding. One after the bonding, they can bend. They can negotiate. They become very flexible. So I think this is the recipes. Easy to say, but super difficult to implement on the ground.
Are they sorry? Or are they sorry they got caught? How much of their motivation is because they were beaten? They got caught, they were detained, or they were turned back. They lost everything. Had they been successful, chances are may not have been quite so sorry.
No, I fully agree. Those who come back here because they were disappointed in the first film. They are not caught. They were disappointed to see what they see and what they saw in ISIS. So they didn't like ISIS in the first place. They come back. When they come back, the Indonesian government debrief them, and then release in an Ramdan case, because Ramdan didn't have any connection with existing terrorist network. So the Indonesian government released them, but keep monitoring him. Other cases, like say three cases in Central Java, I think 4 cases in Central Java. They were arrested and detained. But when they were arrested because they traveled to Syria, not because involved in terrorism. So they, after release from jail, so they start to rebuild their life. One of them now selling meatball soup in Malang. One of them now selling candies. One of them still in prison now. I have been tracking and then try to monitor these individuals.
I suppose it's important to recognize that fact is that there are different categories of these returnees and deportees. There are those that were turned away. There were those that got there and were disgusted and, to their credit, came back. I have some sympathy with them. There are women and children that went there for their own purposes, and the children, they didn't have a choice. And then, of course, there's a final category, isn't there? They're the fighters who were captured on the battlefield. And so I suppose we have to remember that we're not talking about a single monolithic group of ex-ISIS fighters. There are many different cuts of this.
Precisely. This is what I keep proposing in a number of my discussion and my writing. We need to have nuanced understanding of this very issue. Mm-hmm. We cannot lump them in the same category and put them in the same box. Otherwise we might lose the potential of having friend in double quit within this cluster of community. This is what I'm trying to do. Trying to those who are at the periphery, who disenchanted, train them, so not transform them into a credible voice using so many different techniques in communications. Some of them using the film, as you can see. Some of them I use a book. Some of them writing book. Some of them writing for about community websites. Some of them also using social media.
Pak Noor, thank you so much for this. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I think I've learned a lot. I confess, I came into this conversation skeptical, at the least. Kind of saw the government's point of view in leaving them in Syria, but I'm seeing the nuances now.
Yeah, the nuance is the most important. Again, I fully respect my government decisions, but as a scholar, as an activist who has been working too long in this very field, I want to give nuanced understanding to general public. No way. I'm not a guy who ardent advocate to bring them back. No, I just want to give you nuance. That's what the whole point of our conversation today, I think.
And that's On the Level. Our producer is Stephen Handoko. Research by Imam Shofwan. Art by Ismail Fa. Music is courtesy of Poddington Bear. And if you like us, share the pod with your friends. And follow us on Instagram at onthelevel_podcast. I'm Jeff Hutton. Thanks for listening.